All right, enough of that intro. Let's get to James White.
This material and some of the stuff that was going on at that particular point in time in regards to views on human sexuality, so on and so forth. And she made very strong statements about God's sovereignty over these issues, the authority of Scripture in these issues. And a lot of people picked up on it because a lot of people, like myself, have read her books and have appreciated her.
I don't believe he has read her book. I don't believe he's read her books. We'll get to that in just a second. Because if he really read her books, you should never listen to this man ever again.
She does not engage in what I would call fundamentalist thinking. Fundamentalist thinking.
Here's an attack on conservative Christians.
Is the type of thought where you do not carefully follow categories.
How's this for a category? That's not what fundamentalist means. That is a negative pejorative that you are eisegeting on top of and into the term fundamentalist. That's not what fundamentalist means. This is a hipster now in a hipster Calvinist church who suddenly, all of a sudden, has gone from the PRBC to hating fundamentalism. Mr. Tattoo Sleeve. So that's what he means by fundamentalism. That's not what the term means. That's a category error.
You do not take into consideration the possibilities of your own ignorance. You're never ignorant of anything.
Unbelievable.
You always operate from a black and white worldview where there's nothing that's
absolute truths.
There's nothing that's different. There's no situation that is complicated.
Nuanced.
And so
it's nuanced and whimsy.
Comes from that perspective, and hence thinks things through.
She actually does come from that perspective. She comes from a very conservative and fundamentalist presbytery.
Carefully. And you may disagree with her on certain issues, but one thing you're very, very certain of when you're listening to her is this is someone who has thought through these issues. And, of course, what's encouraging to many of us is where she came from. We struggle to get Christians to think from a consistent worldview who don't maybe come from a really difficult background, but when you know what her background was, and if you've listened to many of her lectures, read her book, and if you've accessed...
Read her book? Does James White think there's one book?
Our website, you'll find... I noticed that both Colin Smith and Jeff Downs a few years ago had articles that made reference to Rosaria's book and to my recommendation of it. And I, on this program, have mentioned when I read...
Do you think he has any idea that she's even published The Gospel Comes with a House Key?
Book. And the fact there was a large amount of humor in it. It was very well read, of course. She's a very good writer. But how I had been listening to it on a ride, and how I often find... I chuckle when I think to myself how many times people may have seen me riding by and they hear me all of a sudden break into laughter and probably figure, well, he's a weirdo. They're right, of course, but it had caused me to break.
Just want to point out, we're 7 minutes into the broadcast and we have a bike discussion already.
Laughter numerous times as I was listening to it. Anyway, when you do those things, you are aware of how carefully she expresses herself. And
he's going to tremendously regret every word that he's saying.
So I had seen those memes, and again, I was thankful.
I haven't, by the way. I haven't seen the memes.
Live in a day where those who are willing to take a stand are a smaller and smaller group to take a thoughtful stand. Okay, I guess I need to parse that a little bit more closely. There's one thing, you will have people who take a stand with a flamethrower, and then you'll have those people who take a stand with thoughtful expression. And so I'm appreciative of those who do so with thoughtful expression. Well, I think that's probably what brought us to this day, to be honest with you, my assumption anyway. And that is, I think I wasn't the only one who saw those memes. And so on November 25th, I saw, I don't think it was sent to me. I think I actually saw it myself looking for something else. On November 25th, a article appeared on the Pulpit and Pen website by News Division. And it says, audio interview with Diane Gaskins about Rosaria Butterfield's subversive LGBT agenda. So the first thing we notice is that immediately, whatever this is going to be about, its conclusion is right there in the title and in the following description.
Yeah, it's pretty black and white.
I would love to be able to tell you what this audio is, but as of this morning, the last time I checked, it remains behind a paywall. You have to buy this information. So evidently...
Well, if James would have read the paragraph that accompanied the post, it explains that it is just a little bit of information about what will be released right here. Dun, dun, dun! You see that? Rosaria Butterfield promotes Sam Alberry's theology, Catholic priest who says God is gay, and an occultic scholar. So all that information, it's not like this is secret. It's going to be out on the website. This is a preview. You'll see this later today. I'm going to read from some of this article so that everybody has the information. It's not like it's super secret. It's that patrons get advance notice of stuff. All right?
The only people that are in danger of being deceived by Rosaria Butterfield's subversive LGBT agenda are the Patreon supporters of Pulpit and Pen.
Actually, no, because we're releasing the article to the entire world. That's how it works. And if you would have read carefully the post at Pulpit and Pen, you would have known that.
They seem to be the only one who need this information. Otherwise, it would be made available to everyone.
Like it is right there!
At least as of this morning. So I read the three paragraphs. Rosaria Butterfield does not, okay, not edited well, but Rosaria Butterfield does not hold to conservative views on human sexuality. She is only a slightly more convincing version of Sam Alberry. She is a radical leftist, as will soon be demonstrated through articles at PNP written by Diane Gaskins. Yes, we recognize that Butterfield has branded herself as a conservative LGBTQ convert. However, Diane has studied Butterfield's spoken words and read her material thoroughly and will demonstrate at the Rolex of Polemics blogs, using Butterfield's own words, that she, bold print, she is a subversive plant in the conservative evangelical church, bold print end, and is just as progressive on homosexuality as anyone at Revoice.
Yep.
Butterfield's work on hospitality has been a pivotal cog in the LGBTQ wheel on their journey to take over American Christianity. She is part of the plot. Do not be fooled by her. Now, anyone reading these words probably gets the general idea and thrust of what is going to be said. There is nothing here really left to the imagination. So when I saw this, I rolled my eyes, and on November 27th at 8:57 a.m., I posted the following on Facebook. Did you see the same thing I'm seeing? live response, I'd imagine.
Right here, buddy.
That's okay. What we're going to be documenting. No, what we're going to be documenting. No rational person can disagree with. So further.
No rational person can disagree with. This is a man who's defending Rosaria Butterfield, who has no idea what's in this article right here. I rolled my eyes at the fact that hospitality could be used to push the LGBTQ agenda. Did you know that came from Henry Nouwen's book on spirituality, which she recommended? He's a Roman Catholic priest and a practitioner of Zen, like Zen meditative Buddhism. And he's the one pushing hospitality as a means to affirm homosexuality. Just so you know, you'll see that article later today, James, and you can roll your eyes into the back of your head until you can see behind you.
Further evidence of irrationality coming your way concurrently. So this is what I wrote on the 27th. We knew 2020 would be a wild year, right? Of course, the U.S. presidential election alone would guarantee that. But there is so much else. Well, one thing is for sure, we did not need this kind of stuff. Now, I had posted a screenshot of what I just read to you. I'm so tired of the fundy reformed, if that can be a phrase. It's like Jack Chick read Pink's The Sovereignty of God and went to town in cage stage, yet without ever maturing and growing out of it. Whatever script.
Y'all remember when James White was a fundamentalist? Back when he was at a real Reformed Baptist church? Years ago? Months ago? Good times.
We use, the result is ugly, but we keep glancing because it is like a never-ending theological car wreck. A couple of days ago, this warning appeared that once again makes us remember the nickname we have used in the past for pulpit and pen, slander and keyboard.
Now, does he know what the accusations are? No. He's just assuming that they're slander.
One will be staying with Rosaria, her courage of late to speak the truth in the face of the growing compromise on these key issues.
This is the man who said over and over again, J.D. Hall judges from afar. He has no idea what is in this document right here from Sam Albury. Excuse me, same difference. Rosaria Butterfield. Sam Albury just wrote the foreword to the book, that's all. He has no idea. But I, for one, will be standing with Rosaria Butterfield. Well, if that's not judging from afar, what is that? Is that just judging preemptively? That's not wise judgment.
Has encouraged us all, okay, those of us who are listening anyway, her God-given wisdom must always be heard, not because she's infallible or knows all, but because...
It's just sex. He's going to come to regret every word of it, like later today. He's going to be like, oh, crap. I cannot believe that I said those things. How do I refute what's in the Pulpit and Pen article? I didn't even read her latest book from which this stuff all came. I feel sorry for him.
The humility to bow to the authority of Scripture in all of life. Besides, when
so
she
says.
was a G3 a few years ago, she knitted while I spoke, so there's that. I have no earthly idea who Diane Gaskins is, to be honest. A quick search turned up associations with the usual suspects, all in the same camp. BTWN and TNCI, that's Bible Thumping Wingnut, and the New Christian Intellectual. But let me put it plainly. If, and this word is not difficult to define, if the normal fundy associationalist tripe, together with piles of category errors and the always-present animus that marks P&P and its writers in general, is on the menu for this expose, I, for one, will be using my platform to call it out and set the record straight. So what?
Let me set the record straight right here, because that is what James White said in the OP. But later in the thread, as somebody's like, "What? Why are you doing this? Why are you drawing more attention to Pulpit and Pen when you want people to ignore them?" James said, quote, "They intend on slandering a sister in Christ." So it's not like if. I'm not going to let him get away with this if business. Look at the thread. He said, they intend, as though he knows the intention of our heart, they intend to slander a sister in Christ. That's what he said. You're going to hear everything in the article by the time I'm done talking today, Lord willing, and you'll see it in print before the end of the day.
I say. Well, there is a long history, well-documented history, in regards to Pulpit and Pen and the groups of people that are huddling together in that particular corner of the internet and how they operate. We have documented many times the fact that Jordan Hall is not careful in dealing with categories, fairness.
That's what James White says every time. He's fundamentally, demonstrably wrong about something. I was wrong, but at least I was careful, and you came to your conclusions too fast. But were they right? Well, they were right, but still, you came to those conclusions a little bit too fast. That's what he said. He can't say we're wrong, so it's like he says this garbage.
Is willing to judge people's hearts from afar without information. He believes he has a...
You know, the sad thing is, when I judge from afar, it's more accurate than when James White judges up close.
Gift of discernment that basically no one else has, which is a...
Straw man. Straw man.
And can be abused and has been abused.
Straw man. I begin the program by saying, or sometimes do, that we should be training the powers of our discernment with constant practice, so we might be skilled in the word of righteousness, and that this is a gift that can be learned, that can be attuned, that can be taught, that can be sharpened. Everybody. That's why I do polemics.
Many times in the past, and so I would love to have listened to the audio, but as I pointed out at the time I wrote this, and as of this morning, now I could have changed by now, but as of this morning, this audio you had to pay to listen to. I'm not going to pay Jordan Hall anything. Not
except attention.
When they get around to making this public information, and I
which I will before we're done talking.
Assume that a lot of people who do the Patreon thing will do an early release type thing for their followers, and then a few days later it goes public, and then everybody can listen to it. I figured that's probably what this was going to be as well. Didn't know. But again, this was posted the 25th, so it's been about a week or so.
Yeah, a lot of thorough research goes into something like this.
If the normal fundy associationalist tripe together with... Now, what's associationalist? Associationalism is the fundamentalist, well, you spoke at Church X, and this person spoke at Church X, and that person also spoke at a church where...
Yeah, like Summer White does all the time. Pinch, which is it now? Yeager. Like Summer Yeager does all the time. I can't be your friend if you're friends with somebody else, who's friends with somebody else, who's friends with somebody else, who's pulpit and pen. Let's not pretend like this only happens on our side of the aisle here, Dr. White.
Heretic spoke. Therefore, you're a bad person.
Actually, you call Michael Brown a brother in Christ, therefore you are a bad person. How about that? 1 degree of separation.
It is the degrees of separation thing. It is if you have... One! Well, of course, in fundamentalism, you define everything as a gospel issue.
Not true.
We've played...
The Gospel Coalition does that. I've made fun of that for years. And, hey, did you know that animal welfare is a gospel issue? And I'm like pulling my hair out and making podcasts about it and writing articles about it. It's not a gospel issue until you say it's a gospel issue. And then your works righteousness is a gospel issue. That's not what fundamentalism is. He said this before. He's wrong. That's not what fundamentalism is about.
Recordings from fundamentalists where, on eschatology or whatever else it might be.
And you've heard me 1,000 times say, I'm not even arguing about eschatology. Eschatology should be the caboose of your train, not the engine. So I don't know who he's talking about, but that's straw man.
Fundamentalists have a very broad definition of what's absolutely definitional. And so...
Y'all that listen to Polemics Report know that I go into great pains on almost every other episode, at least, talking about the difference between a primary, secondary, and tertiary issue. I teach that. Straw man. Straw man. If there was a J.D. Hall straw man, it'd be on fire.
If anyone looks different than you, or in this situation, if anyone has any differences from you, in viewing anything in regards to the challenges that we face today, from the homosexual community, from transgenderism, whatever it might be. If anyone does not absolutely agree with you 100%, then they are part of the cabal. They are part of the plot. Don't be fooled by them. Use the language.
How about if we have in writing from Rosaria Butterfield saying that we should play by the rules of the LGBT community, who she greatly admires, and refer to the partners of homosexuals as wives and husbands, because that's polite? What about preferred gender pronoun usage as a matter of hospitality? Does it matter to the listeners of the Dividing Line or Polemics Report if someone is teaching that? I'm not asking if it's a gospel issue. I'm asking, does it matter? Do you think it matters?
The news division article. So what I said was, if this material is based on associationalism, well, she has spoken here, or she has said something about this person,
or had Sam Albury write a foreword to her book, or it was endorsed by Tim Keller and the gay cabal, or,
and this is the big thing,
or if she's telling people to read the book of occultic specialists.
If this person does not call that person a heretic who's going to hell.
Nope. Anyone listening to Polemics Report knows that's a straw man. We use the H word very sparingly. I usually call people stupid, dumb, ignoramuses. I use the H word really sparingly, though.
Then that makes you guilty of whatever it is that, whatever heresy you think that person is guilty of as well. That if that was what this review was going to be, then I would call it out. That then led to the posting the day before Thanksgiving of an article not an article, the posting of audio that was titled, and I thought I had grabbed this here, and I don't have it. They trolled through my social media feed.
Just so you know, he's going to complain about the photograph that we used. I don't select that stuff. Tim Hearn does. So I'm just going to throw Tim under the bus. But
I found a picture.
Who cares?
That I had taken out when I was riding someplace, and it must have been an early morning ride, because
these same people always find the fattest picture of me that they can find when they talk about me. Just get over it, man.
Recognize the glasses. They're the photochromatic type, so you can wear them at night. And when the sun comes up, you're not blinded and don't have to carry two pairs of glasses when you're riding. So it's they've put the pulpit and pen logo on it, and it's meant to make me look goofy, because, as we will see, one of the things that Jordan Hall says is that I am a cyclist who once in a while does apologetics. And so that was that. But it was, the title was If Ignorance and Arrogance Had a Love Child. And that's me.
Well, that was the title posted at Bible Thumping Wingnut. I don't think those words came out of my mouth in the program. You'll notice it has a different title at Pulpit and Pen. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus on that one, though. So I'm going to say Dr. White is a perfect combination of absolute ignorance. He has no idea what's in Rosaria's last book. I'm not sure he knows that it's been written. And if he did, you should never listen to him ever again. But he is audaciously arrogant. So stick by it.
And this was all due to the fact that I dared to say that if this expose is nothing more than the same type of fundamentalist, associationalist, category error-laden stuff that we have become accustomed to from Pulpit and Pen,
I'm going to just hit mute instead of pause so that I try to get through it as quickly as possible. When we warned people about Karen Swallow Prior 5 years ago, it would have been really nice for people to have listened, right? I mean, we all see that, right? Tom Buck sees that now. Tom Askell sees that. James White sees that. Everybody sees that. Pulpit and Pen was right. Okay? Well, when we're warning you about someone like Rosaria Butterfield, I don't want some nincompoop who has no idea what he's talking about to get in the way and say, I'm going to stand with my sister whose godly wisdom should always be listened to. Did you catch where she endorsed a guy who said that Jesus is gay? Oh yeah, we'll get to that in just a second. Get out of the way, James. You're being dangerous.
Like that. Jordan Hall has no limits as to what he will publish, allege, assert, whether he has personal knowledge of the situation.
That's a dangerous thing for him to say because he's tempting me to talk about the real reason why he left Phoenix Reformed Baptist Church or the financial situation of Apologia Church right now, and they're hemorrhaging. He's tempting me to demonstrate that I don't have any limits. I consider it like Satan's tempting. Believe me, if you're offended by what I say, you would surely be offended by what I don't.
Those seemingly have all come off, and that's no longer the situation, unfortunately. And so I'm going to absolutely make Jordan's day by playing for you a good portion of what he said, because for Jordan, this just he already was on Facebook talking about his millions of followers. Here. I think this was yesterday, day for yesterday. He says, y'all, good luck on ignoring Pulpit and Pen and putting us out of business by acting like we're Voldemort. We can't be ignored. We've more influence than anyone in online Christian publishing. We have
True.
1 million readers every month.
True.
Keep up that boycott strategy. It seems to have worked brilliantly.
True.
The fact is our website and those of our many affiliates who are all growing and growing and growing is because our information is compelling and arguments are salient.
Yep.
You can't kill truth and it won't be boycotted. We are thriving and will continue because this is a supply and demand issue. Supply of truth is low, so demand is high. The more you people whine and
I like how he's reading it to make it sound really unreasonable.
I just simply will invite the listening audience to define the term edification for themselves. I prefer defining it biblically.
I suppose if you insult people, and I'm talking like this, and recalling the thought you had about them being pawn-sucking idiots while riding a bike at 1.5 speed, it's not as insulting as when you talk like a normal person.
Just not playing the whole thing, obviously, because there was a whole section where JD spent time making himself look like the Apostle Paul. It was really fascinating.
Don't know what he's talking about.
Fascinating study in how he views himself.
Don't know what he's talking about.
But we won't be playing that.
I don't know what he's talking about.
This is actually public, so you can grab it if you want to. This was on the Bible-thumping Wingnut Network. But here are just a few of the segments. Oops, 1.6 is going to sound really funny. Here are a few of the segments from.
You listen to this at 1.6 speed,
and then we'll pick up from there.
Today's program, we're going to talk about a cyclist who sometimes is an apologist in Phoenix, having a hissy fit over an interview that I don't think he listened to with Diane Gaskins about a topic that he is not familiar with, about a person whose material he has not read, because he is not a... I recognize this is weird because you're watching a live review of a live review. You're watching a live review of me reviewing James White, who's reviewing me. So this is probably like the third or fourth level of Dante's Hell, but let's just see how this goes. If he starts getting too boring, I'm just going to get into the material on Rosaria Butterfield right away. We'll see what happens.
That he has the interview behind a paywall. He faults me for not listening to it.
No. I faulted James White for saying he was going to stand up for Rosaria no matter what, in spite of the fact that he had not heard of it.
In what I read to respond to, I mean, don't you think the description, the 3 paragraphs, don't you think there was enough there to respond? And that's all I would.
No, because you didn't hear any of the details. You were just like, I deny these charges. You haven't heard that. You haven't even read the article yet that is right here. Look, bam. All right, you see how long this is? It's long. It has videos. It has links. It has quotations. It's got, look, I'm just going as fast as I can go. I'm not even done scrolling with it yet. So no, I don't think that a short description of what we were going to talk about, which you have not heard, is enough to say definitively, I'm going to stand by this good sister no matter what. Do you remember the definition of downgrade? Or how downgrade happens? Google dissection of a downgrade. Downgrade happens when someone you like does something sinful or stupid. And instead of defending the person, you defend that which is what they did that is sinful and stupid. And therefore downgrade spread. So you like the person, you want to defend them and be like, well, they're not all bad. But instead of just stopping there, you go on to defend what it is that they've done, and then that stupidity spreads. But it all starts with, it's somebody that you like. A good-natured brother, as Spurgeon would say in the Sword and the Trowel downgrade controversy. This is James White. Rosaria Butterfield is a good-natured sister. I have no idea what the accusations are against her, or why they're there. I haven't seen the evidence that they say that they will present in a forthcoming article, but I'm going to tell you right now that they're slanderous, even though I don't know why, and so here's my judgment. That's what I was podcasting about.
And he needs to do the work of an apologist carefully. He needs to research topics before he opens his mouth about it. And he needs to understand the content and the subject matter that he's trying to present to the audience, or else he will, through his podcast, be crossing land and sea, making converts that are twice as ignorant as he is. He's smart about some things. That doesn't mean that he has learned about all things. And so maybe he ought to leave polemics to the experts, and he can focus on how to make friends in mosques and not ever convert anyone ever to Jesus from Islam, but proves himself valuable in reaching Muslims with, friendship or some garbage. That's his forte. Let him focus on that. We'll do what we do. So I'm going to stand up for Diane Gaskins, who he has decided to attack for apparently no reason at all in his ignorance. Anyways, we'll get to all of that in just a moment.
Did you miss the attack on Diane Gaskins? I read you the entirety.
The slander part, and it was an interview with Diane, and you're like, I don't know who Diane is. I don't know who this Diane woman is, but it's got to be slander.
I can't attack someone whose stuff I haven't heard yet because J.D. Hall won't make it publicly available and wants you to pay him.
Bam! Publicly available.
Here, this earth-shaking, massively important stuff. So the last portion of the program was also supposed to be behind a paywall. It was his intention to do the attack on me in the Patreon thing. So if you're a supporter, then you get to hear this. But he decided, he must have just been so proud of how it turned out that he went ahead and made it publicly available. And so I just want to point out, I once you hear this, you've already heard enough, but once you hear this and you hear the attitude portrayed by Pastor J.D. Hall, I would just wonder, are his advertisers aware of his behavior? Black Robe Rifles, Crown and Cross Books, are they really to be supporting J.D. Hall attacking Christian?
Here's the irony. It's like, do these people know the way J.D. is? Well, first of all, I'm Black Robe Rifles. Crown and Cross books, or whoever else, all of my followers, why do you think they listen? Like it's hidden. What?
And when they hear JD behaving the way that he behaves,
speaking frankly,
who have been Christian pastors longer than JD Hall has been a Christian pastor, I just wonder what they think when they hear that kind of thing.
When James White covers up or doesn't answer the problem, doesn't deal with the issue of his elders secretly recording a conversation and then anonymously posting it to YouTube. I wonder if his sponsors, he doesn't have any, but I wonder if they know about that behavior and if that's qualifying as a pastor. I don't mean to conduct whataboutism, but you know what? The people who believe in what I'm doing are sick and tired of you trying to neuter them rhetorically. They want to be able to speak freely.
I'm going to title this program A Study in Projection. Projection is where you project onto others the things you yourself are doing. Keeping that in mind, I remember the first person I met that just absolutely illustrated projection perfectly. Years and years and years ago on FidoNet, a woman by the name of Sue Weidemark. Yes, Rich remembers. Sue Weidemark. JD reminds me of Sue Weidemark in many ways. And what you're going to hear is me being accused of everything that JD does. So a bunch of the things
I'm afraid this may devolve into like me, and then I'm going to be like me, and then he's going to be like me. So if it starts me, I'm just going to get into the Diane Gaskins stuff, and then get back maybe to James and see if he's moved on to cycling or something else. And we'll see where the program goes from there.
Apologist doesn't know, never read Eve's Conger, doesn't know anything about what he's talking about, but that won't stop him. He is absolutely convinced of his incredible correctness about everything. And
hold on a second.
So you're going to
I am convinced about my correctness about the things I choose to talk about. There are a lot of things that I choose not to talk about. You might have noticed that. A lot of the things Dr. White talks about, I choose not to talk about. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, I'm listening to the Text and Canon guys, and I'm listening to James White, and I'm listening to both arguments, and I'm going, that sounds like it. That's a good point. That's a good point. I read Greek like I was hooked on phonics, okay? So, I'm competent and capable to prepare a sermon with the Greek, but I'm the guy that will read the lexicon, not write one, all right? There are some things I'm just not going to talk about. But what I do know, I'll talk about. And what I talk about, I do know. James, though, he's like, hey, I'm an expert in A, so let me talk about C. It's like a Hollywood celebrity that gives you an opinion about politics. You're like, just dance. Sing a song. That's why we're listening to you. If it's polemics, I know about it.
to be associationalism. Exactly on the nose what I said it would be. That's what he argues. It's like he doesn't even realize he's doing it. I don't think that he does. The JD I knew years ago would have, but I don't know that there's much of that JD left.
That one bothers me a little bit when people say, you've changed. Dude, if you... anyone that knows me personally knows that I'm actually kinder and gentler than I used to be. Believe it or not. Yeah. It's just, back then it was cool when I was critiquing Arminians. But when I critique my own camp, well, now you've changed. No, I've not. I'm just saying what I would have said back then. It's just back then nobody was listening to me.
Who have read her materials. She is a part of a church. She's a part of a very conservative church. Mm-hmm. She's under elders. JD doesn't care about any of that stuff. That stuff's irrelevant. That doesn't. That doesn't matter because
it does matter to me because I'm convinced that she has snuck in like privily and is leading captive like weak women, and that the elders and leaders like Askell, White, etc., are not paying attention to what she's saying in her books, just some sound bites that they're seeing in social media that differentiates her, so they think, from Sam Alberry. But in reality, they're working together. There's a picture of her laughing with her head on his shoulder at this event where they're in complete agreement. So that's part of my concern, is that she's in the Orthodox, Reform camp.
I asked them about that I asked them about critical race theory, and I'm going to move my mic just a second. I need to ask them to do that when it comes to Rosaria Butterfield or same-sex attraction. What we're going to release, and we haven't done it yet, Diane has done a great deal of research. It will indicate, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that she is maybe a slightly better version of Sam Alberry. When I say better, I mean better at doing what Sam Alberry does, not better for us. Her views are the same. She's more sinister and more subversive. And her material is being used to promote the worst of the worst.
The worst of the worst.
But James White, who has been wrong about the Pope, James White claimed that when the Pope said the cross is a failure, that we took him out of context. The Pope said it again a few weeks later in the same context. He continues to say it. He said it again this year. He means it no matter what context he says it in. He means it the way exactly he says it.
Now, here's the fundamentalist is coming out because J.D. Hall does not understand Roman Catholic theology, does not understand liberation theology, does not understand Southern American liberation theology as it's morphed into the Jesuit form, and he has no idea.
I have done more public lectures on liberation theology, black liberation theology, and Jesuit theology than James White. That's all there is to it. My book is written on the subject. It's being published, like right now as we speak. But I've got no idea what I'm talking about. The cross is a failure. The Pope doesn't mean the cross. We always said was the Pope said the cross is a failure, which is what he said.
Nobody in their right mind is going to make an issue out of, because there are far more important things to go on. But again, it's that fundamentalist attitude. I have to be right.
I was right. Thank you.
What the context in his world would be, or what he means by it. And I don't care if it would actually help me to reach Roman Catholics or not help me to reach more Roman Catholics. That part doesn't matter.
I'm not going to provide an apologetic for the Pope of Rome. If James White believed his confession, he would believe him to be the Antichrist. So, I'm not going to give an apologetic to the Antichrist. Somebody the other day said, you have to give both sides. I'm like, no, I don't. What are you talking about? I'm a free man. I don't have to give both sides. I'm not giving the Pope's perspective. He said the cross is a failure. Forget him. He's the Pope.
Compare it with my own having done all of those things and make up your own mind. Look at the books that each one of us have written on these subjects, on whether it's justification by faith, sola scriptura, Roman Catholic controversy. Then look at all of his books on that subject, of which there are none, of course. But compare them and see for yourself. Make a decision for yourself.
You can't really determine the truth about who is right regarding the Pope said the cross is a failure controversy by reading our books and then determining who knows more. You would have to determine who was right about the Pope says the cross is a failure controversy by looking at the facts regarding the Pope says the cross is a failure controversy. And regarding those facts in that specific situation, James White may know more than J.D. Hall on the subject. I don't know that he does. But let's say that he does. I was still right. The Pope said it again in a different context. This is a different kind of Pope. He's not Pope John Paul II. I'm telling James White something that I wish that he would listen to Church Militant or LifeSite News or the Lepanto Institute and understand Pope Francis is a different kind of Pope, all right? He's how people say, if you, heck yes, does a bear poop in the woods? They would say, is the Pope Catholic? And now you got Catholics at Lepanto and LifeSite and Church Militant going, Michael Hitchborn and so forth going, I don't know if he is. So James White is looking at Pope Francis through the perspective of Pope John Paul II or Pope Benedict. It does not work that way. But I don't think he knows, in terms of what's going on right now with Francis, to understand these things. This is why apologetics and polemics have to be wed. A church is a positive recovery environment, while behind my back, my son-in-law was being an addict and a drunk. So just admit you're wrong sometimes, James White. Just admit you're wrong sometimes.
Okay.
And for everyone going, that's a...
Okay, so notice how low JD will go.
I'm demonstrating that I wasn't slanderous and that we were right.
With the idea what he's talking about. He is taking the testimony of unbelievers. Here is a man who is a pastor who knows.
It's in the Apologia Church's press release. That was in the press release from Apologia Church.
He is willing from afar, in his ignorance, to slander others, to slander fellow ministers in a way that is absolutely, utterly disqualifying.
No, you're disqualified, frankly. Here's the fact. James White said, this church is a great recovery environment for drunks. There doesn't need to be any caution with Christian liberty. How dare they say that this isn't a positive recovery environment, while his son-in-law was getting sloshed. The fact is, in that case, we judged better from afar than James White could judge his own household.
Every day from morning till night. That cannot be a happy place to be. That is a destructive place to be. And I am one of a number of people who have tried to warn this man, because we've seen him going this direction for a long time.
I've never got a phone call from James White in my life. Or a text. Now, Rich Pierce did call me one time to tell me that Hank Hanegraaff surely had a good reason to leave the Christian faith, and that we were jumping to conclusions to believe that just because he became Eastern Orthodox, he believed like Eastern Orthodox. That's the only time that I know of James reached out to me.
You can go back, and those programs are still available. You can look at them yourselves.
Also, the articles at Christian News Network that tell how that tragic story ended. Sorry, when the story ended the way it did, the most respectful thing for James White to have done was to tuck his tail between his legs and just to shut up about it. But you continue to say, you're slandering, you're slandering, you're slandering. All we did was say, y'all might want to be careful with alcohol. And you were like, pfft. That was James White and Jeff Durbin's basic response to Pulpit and Pen and Christian News Network and thousands of other people. Their basic response was, pfft, pfft, pfft. We're great. We're good. Pfft. It's stupid. Fundamentalists. While at the same time this tragedy unfolds in your family, you're still going to call us slanderers over this. Ugh.
You are hitching your star to someone who will demand absolute loyalty. You will never be able to disagree on anything. Just be prepared. Just be aware. Listen to what's going on.
I caught the tail end of that. If he's saying that I demand people to agree with me 100% of the time, my communications manager would know more than anybody. Cody, who hates presuppositionalism. Cody, I would like you to make a public statement, not on behalf of Pulpit and Pen, but on behalf of yourself, as to whether or not that statement is true. Do I demand people to agree with me 100% of the time?
If you don't mind.
Yeah, you got thrown in there too.
I'd like to take the screen for a moment.
Oh, the whole screen? The Rich Cam on Max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I recall, shortly after the first week after Hank had been charismated, I read the story that I believe it was Seth Dunn? Or was it
That
Jeff
sounds
Maples?
familiar. One of the two.
Had written regarding it, and for a long time before that, I had the opinion privately that, and I was by the way, the one who put that label there. And before I said it publicly, and I've discussed this on this show before, I got on the phone with Jordan Hall, and I told him...
You contacted him, huh?
I believe it was me. And by the way, when he says that you sent me, that's false. And I told him at the time that I am one who has opinions that are of my own.
If James White did not send Rich Pierce, then I apologize for making the statement.
And I don't always take that advice. And I put my headset on, which I know has a tendency to drown out the other person on the other end of the line. And I let Mr. Hall know in no uncertain terms that it was my opinion, and I still hold to this opinion, that he and his organization are yellow journalists. And this recounting on his part is a bold-faced lie. I considered Hank Hanegraaff's
It's bald-faced lie.
the Eastern Orthodox Church to be an act of apostasy. But at the time I was contacting him,
I'm going to let him talk, so I want to hear what he says, then I'm going to
read
respond
the
to
story
it.
that was written and was basically telling him, you are reporting facts that you don't have yet. We are
If I was Apology at Church, I'd just pull out the recording.
information. You have half of the story. You are extrapolating information from that half of the story.
This part is true.
And you are drawing conclusions and reporting them as facts that are based purely on speculation.
Which
It
turned
is
out to
my
be
clear
100% right. That's
I said to
100%
him,
right.
You take the few facts that you do have and extrapolate additional information from them.
And it was
via
right.
Speculation.
And we were right.
His response
And we were
was,
right.
I have that right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he thinks it's a gift.
Yeah.
And
I was right. You guys were
don't
wrong.
have
That's
that
the
right.
See, that's the frustrating thing. I was actually right with Hank Hanegraaff. He says maybe he had a mental illness, maybe it was his wife that did it, and then he gave me a story about a Mormon who was converted and then reconverted because he needed cash from his family. He's like, you don't know what's going on. I'm like, how does that make it any better? That's the conversation that was had. Turns out he didn't know what charismation was or how much energy and information it took to become charismated. It's a lot of work. We were right. He's complaining about us coming to the right conclusion sooner than he did.
Reasons
No.
to go to Eastern Orthodoxy. It is an apostasy. And folks, I'm looking you square in the eye and I'm telling you, this is yellow journalism at its core. He, as the news division, is reporting this to you as news.
It is called the Pulpit and Pen, full name of J.D. Hall. Everyone understands that there is news and there is opinion. And by the way, in that situation with Hank Hanegraaff, I hate to keep pointing it out, who is right?
Addressed this in the past, and you will find that what I've just told you is entirely consistent with what I've said before.
Same thing with the yellow journalism over the booze and tattoos. We were right.
What happened in that particular situation is fundamentalists especially have next to no ability whatsoever to distinguish between Eastern Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism.
All I can say is this might convince some James White listeners. I don't know what I'm talking about. But if you've listened to Pulpit and Pen, I explained in great detail charismation. And that it's much more difficult to become charismated in terms of understanding the doctrine of the EO than it is to become Roman Catholic by basically attending a class for an afternoon. It's James White who failed to distinguish, or at least Rich Pierce, who failed to distinguish between the two.
If it's necessary, then like this situation, then we will do so.
Keep in mind, in both cases, they're on the side of the Pope and Hank Hanegraaff. All right, I don't know if I need to say much more.
Speaking, nothing like giving an answer before the case is finished, which we're being accused of. Hey, Jordan, have you brought that audio out from behind a paywall, or you still want people to give you money? So that's a question.
It's right there.
We got to get through this because we're running.
He's
really
gonna
short on time.
regret
I'm
it.
not sure I'm gonna make it.
Oh,
What is that
mercy
reason?
sakes.
No, he was wrong, wasn't he? So White says on his Facebook page, we knew 2020 would be a wild year, right? Of course. The United States presidential election alone would guarantee that, but there's so much else. But one thing is for sure.
I'm reviewing him, reviewing me, reviewing his Facebook post. We're now at the 5th level of Dante's Inferno.
Who draws on themselves. It's lame, James. Do you drive a Mazda Miata too? Really? I bet he does. Grow up.
Did you catch that? I think he was going to stop there. and then it said, I better say I think he does.
I don't know what I would have said.
I don't even know what a Mazda Miata is, to be perfectly honest with you.
I'll just put it this way: if you're ever caught drinking and driving with a Smirnoff Ice, it's probably in a Mazda Miata.
It's sort of nice to have all-wheel drive, whatever you call it. Sort of nice right now. No. Anyway, so let's continue. We don't want to stop the slander fest.
Yes, you can be fundamentalist and reformed. Have you ever?
Oh, by the way, when I defined my issues with fundamentalism, I was talking about how they think. The difficulty in category issues, the expansion of what is definitional at the expense of adiaphora. And
like when they fight over their right to drink as though that's a primary issue, or defend their tattoos to the death.
Having trolled someone else's social media feed to find the goofiest picture you can of them. What does that tell you about?
A, that was Tim Hurd, and B, he probably didn't have to try very hard.
I don't know.
Met someone from ARBCA?
You're wearing a Cosby sweater right now. That's all I'm saying. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying you don't have to try very hard.
Mercy's sakes.
Yes. Have I ever met anyone from ARBCA? Yeah. I think I've spoken at probably 100 times as many ARBCA churches as you have. I think, probably.
That's pretty good, because there's only like 100 ARBCA churches. So he's spoken at every one.
One. And so you don't get it. That's where you've really changed over the past couple of years. Is you used to get it. Now you don't get it anymore.
Drives me.
How are those speaking gigs at those Reformed Baptist seminaries? They keeping up, James? Or did they drop off for some reason recently?
I'm just going to leave this for everybody. Everybody's going to listen to this. James White needs one of those 2-seat bicycles so that he and Beth Moore can ride around together complaining about fundamentalists because they sound exactly alike.
Anyone
that was one of my favorite
who can
lines.
think like that is not thinking very well. I have been critical of Beth Moore. Can someone please explain where I've said anything?
In terms of rhetoric, it was a funny rhetorical line because you both are bashing fundamentalists. I recognize, for the sake of full disclosure, James White has lots of agreements with Beth Moore. It's just, did I say agreements? Disagreements. It's just they have one agreement, and that is those fundamentalists are awful.
Expansion of what is absolutely definitional to a large number of things. The mind.
Oh, I think they also agree on Rosaria Butterfield.
Of not allowing for difference, of demanding look at what Jordan Hall does every single day on Pulpit and Pen, demanding that the approach. See, it's not enough for us to say, this neo-Marxism is bad. What he's saying is, and the only way to approach it is my way. And if you take any other way, then you're one of them. It's the division. You have to be either completely with me or you're out there.
I seem to remember a smart man saying that at some point. It might have been, was it Aesop in one of his fables, or was it one of those Confucius say?
No way God could use somebody who's saying anything any differently than me. That's the fundamentalism I'm talking about. That's what we're talking about.
Don't call trannies by their preferred pronoun. Can we start with that? Can we be in agreement on that?
And it's destructive.
James says, I'm so tired of the fundy reformed. I bet because the fundy reformed, like Robert Truelove, are kicking your tail up and down the debate octagon, which you refuse to have. But
which notice the twisting of reality. Who's willing to have the debate? Who's willing to name the other side? Who's willing to quote the other side? I am. So, it's a lie. I debate Riddle, Truelove. I challenge them to debate. And for J.D. Hall, you refuse to debate. It's just a lie. But once you start getting this emotional and
Somebody, if you're listening to this, get Riddle and True Love on the line and see if they would be willing to debate James and if that's true.
Up in your own correctness. You just start spewing stuff out there that's just absolutely silly.
As I was listening to this, the thought kept going through my mind regarding the love of the brethren and how that is so missing from this.
Well, obviously.
Okay. Here's the part that I'm not going to tolerate. James White weaponizes his fans, who are absolute animals, beasts. Cage Stage, as much as he talks about Cage Stage, he has more Cage Stage followers than anyone I've ever seen. He throws red meat to his fanboys, lets them go out and attack in the most vicious of ways, while he kind of flags and signals to them, like, this guy over here, attack this guy right here, and then he takes like a screenshot that somebody would never see, and he throws it on his Facebook page, and it's like, go attack, boys! And then for 3 days, they're pounded by James White fans, while he sits back in his Cosby sweater, and he's like, you know, I just think that we should be above all of this. You know what? It's not loving to accuse me of slander for saying true things. That's not loving. It's not loving. It's not loving causing brothers to stumble into alcoholism. None of that is loving. It's not loving what James White does to, by the way, as many enemies as I have, compare mine to him. Mine to his. Has he ever reconciled with another human being in his life? I mean, this is a serious question. Has James White ever in his life reconciled with another human being ever? Don't talk to me about love of the brethren.
Robert True Love, when I posted that comment from True Love, agreeing with Ehrman about an anonymous slanderous report about my behavior at a 2014 debate in South Africa, which immediately two brothers by name in South Africa said didn't happen. But Robert True Love said, yep, sounds about right. You know, so there you go. Oh, by the way, J.D. Hall has zero academic training in that field. None. He's never taught a class. He's never written a book. He's never done anything. But he's certain that I've been getting kicked all over the place. The bias and prejudice of this man is astonishing. And if he had anyone around him that could rein him in, that could say, JD, dude, you really? Can you really back that? Yeah. But he doesn't. He doesn't.
No one.
He's surrounded by yes men, because anybody else has already run for the hills. And so there's nobody to say, you know, you're sort of missing it here.
I think he's jumped to conclusions.
But you know, like in the marketplace of ideas, they're whooping you. I listened to the Text and Canon conference. You didn't hardly address it. They demolished your perspective. I still agree with James White. I'm not KJV or TRO, but they wiped the floor with them. It's embarrassing. If I was him, I'd be tired of them too, because their arguments, especially that of Riddle, were incredibly compelling.
Wow.
He says, quote, it's like Jack Chick read Pink's The Sovereignty of God and went to town in Cage Stage, yet without ever maturing and growing out of it. Random insults. Throw some insults in there.
Oh, you're not familiar with how to do that. That's actually a description of the...
Just consider every insult I've given so far to be a description, so it doesn't count.
Is a theology of grace. When you combine fundamentalism with Reformed theology. See, JD thinks he can do this.
Reformed theology is fundamentalism.
That he is attempting to create something that historical Reformed theology had no knowledge of.
That's not true.
And that is this Reformed fundamentalism. And
it's what they accuse Spurgeon of, essentially.
It's like a never-ending theological car wreck. No, they keep glancing because they find readers find what they see at Pulpit and Pen to be compelling.
I'm getting tired.
Why. It's compelling. It's truth. It's a supply and demand economy. It's supply side economics. That's what it is.
Supply side economics. That's a fascinating perspective that basically gives you the idea that you can say whatever you want to say about anyone, and people are just going to buy it. Was there something there?
Yeah,
because we're going to end up going over time.
I know. We make plans in our heart. I point out, JD pointing out how many millions of followers he's got. Folks, if you come to aomen.org, you will not find ads.
No.
You will not find the AdSense accounts on our YouTube channel. You won't find them. We are supported.
How about this? Apologia has a paywall that's 45% higher than Pulpit and Pins, where James is a member. Excuse me, an elder. So take your argument and put it up your nose.
You need to think on that. I know I keep thinking on the business angle of things, but that's part of what I do here. Okay? And so I see the business angle. I see the question of what they call income streams.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole bunch of them over there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of them. I defy them to take them all away and survive. The end.
We did it for 9 years without any income at Pulpit and Pin. 9 years.
Standing with Rosaria. Let me stop there. He doesn't know what the accusations are against Rosaria.
By the way, those income streams are given away to others. A significant portion of it is given to my local church. The rest, like all of it from Patreon, all of it goes to missions.
Or are you just assuming that your readers are just so blinded by your zealous leadership that they're going to believe whatever it is you have to say? You made plenty of accusations in your introduction to the audio that you then demand people pay you money to listen to.
It's just getting old for him to keep repeating that, because it's just an introduction. Everybody's going to see it. It might even be up by now. I don't know.
Hinged. And I'm sorry for tuning in for Radio Free Geneva. We're going to get to it. Sorry. I should have figured this was going to take longer than this, than an hour, but there you go. That's how it is.
We didn't get into them in depth in the podcast, but it's a Patreon-only podcast, so I don't know how he could have listened to it. But even if he did, it's not there. This is prejudging. This is James White saying, regardless of what the evidence is against Rosaria, and you know this numbskull has not read her books, James White, get on your program and say, like, in honesty, that at this point when you made this Facebook post, you've read Rosaria's books.
I've read Rosaria's books. How's that?
Okay, I'm going to light you up!
I've met with her.
I'm going to light... No, I didn't ask if you've met with her, James. I'm going to light him up.
Your research, you would have found that on our website.
There's about ready to be a rocket launched out of the USS Pulpit and Pin straight into the Dividing Line studios and blow it up.
Rosaria, everybody. Is this 8th grade?
That is a good question that many people ask, and you're listening to you, sir. And you don't seem to.
I know you are, but what am I?
You're making this easy. This is like shooting ducks on a pond.
Yeah, I'm about ready to shoot some ducks here in a second.
James White writing a burn book. I just want everybody to know, I stand with Rosaria Butterfield. I stand with my friend against that mean Pulpit and Pin. Why don't you stop and wait and see what the accusations are?
Yeah, she is a subversive plant in the conservative evangelical church. Is not an accusation. Yeah, there you go.
As we detail for you who she endorses in her book, the language that she uses, because it is, I'm telling you, it is out of your mind crazy.
I'm tickled pink that James says he's read her book. Tickled pink.
Rosaria, how many times does James White have to be on the wrong side of an issue just because Pulpit and Pin is on the other side for him to figure out that's a bad idea and he's going to shoot himself in the face? The Hardings did that. You want to know how Aaron and, I forget her wife's name, but Mr. and Mrs. Aaron Harding, you know how they became so radically liberal? They just decided to take the opposite side of Pulpit and Pin on any given issue, and now they're woke social justice warriors. Same thing goes for Dr. White. We could say black, he'd say white. We'd say, we'd say sound theologian, and he would say Michael Brown. He's going to be the opposite of pulpit and pins. I stand with Rosaria. You don't even know what the accusations are. You don't know her books, her material. He says, quote, her courage as of late to speak the truth in the face of the glowing compromise on these key issues has encouraged us all. Great. She spoke truth recently on that one issue. Have you read her book? See, James White has this simplistic mindset. He's not a deep thinker. He's really not. No. He's easily fooled. He's terribly naive. Like, we're saying, for example, look at what Mueller is doing, and James White can't get past, look what Al Mueller has said.
By the way, last night, disconnection, but last night on Cross Politic, you need to listen to last night's Cross Politic episode. Doug Wilson was on, and Doug Wilson was asked, did you get a chance to? Doug Wilson was asked about Al Mueller, and his response really excellently encompasses where I've been on this subject. We've not talked about it, but it really, really does. So this silliness aside, for those who are serious about these things, I thought Doug's response and his interaction, because there was pushback. It wasn't just a monologue. It was a good dialogue, because there was pushback. There's different views amongst the guys there as to what's going on in the SBC and stuff like that. So last night's Cross Politic episode, look it up and grab it. It's on YouTube. And the whole thing was very, very interesting, but especially, and that was right toward the end, but especially that was, the whole thing was really good.
He doesn't understand people can operate on two different levels because they have two hands.
So in other words, this is his, everybody different than me, all these guys, they're just lying. What they say and what they do are two different things. I'm the one that gets to determine this. I don't
get to determine it, but I get to have an opinion about it, right? Can we all agree with that? I get to have an opinion about it. People want to hear the opinion. Some people want to hear the opinion. I am concerned that James White does not understand that liars lie and deceivers deceive, and that people sneak in destructive heresies. He doesn't get that. Whether it's Jarvis Williams or Albert Mohler, he doesn't understand that the devil deceives and that false brothers snuck in deceitful and destructive heresies, right? They sneak in seeking to lead captive weak women. He doesn't seem to get it. He's like, well, what they say is this, and I'm going to take them at their word. All right. Not discerning.
A few good one-liners. So in other words, it doesn't matter how costly those quote-unquote one-liners were in our society. That's not enough. His motivations will be made clear over time. But I want you to catch here, because ready for the associationalism? Ready for exactly what I predicted?
On the back of the book, why don't you take a look at who endorsed it? Let that give you a moment of pause.
She chose the endorsements!
Remember in 1998?
It's not like they were at Walmart at the same time. They were at the same Christmas party. Or like Richard Spencer endorsed some Democrat for office, Tulsi Gabbard. Richard Spencer, a white supremacist, endorsed Tulsi Gabbard for president. That's not her fault. She's not asking for his endorsement. She thought these would be good guys to endorse her book. That's one degree of separation.
He's a Jesuit. See? Associationalism.
I don't know what just happened because I was talking, but if you had a Jesuit endorse your book, you're a moron. Quit it.
Look, it's on the back. And if you agree on anything, then you must agree on everything.
No, but I can say you don't have any discernment. You're stupid. Did James White just admit he had a... I wish I wasn't talking. Did he just admit to having a Jesuit endorse his book, The Forgotten Trinity? What is wrong with him?
Team. He says her God-given wisdom must always be heard, not because she is... All I can say is James White's really going to regret that statement. He'll dig in and be wrong, like he always is. Every time Pulpit and Pen argues with James White, he is proven wrong.
Demonstrably.
Every time.
Demonstrably
Proven wrong.
Infallible.
If you don't believe that...
No. I have not claimed to be infallible. I'm not infallible. But every time James White and I have argued about something that is objective, he's been proven objectively wrong. To say that I've always been right so far does not mean that I'm not capable of error.
Life. Ooh. Are they dating? This is like makeup.
Did you catch it? Are they dating? So when I say that in reading her books,
We'll get to that in a second.
in her conversion story, was this,
Which one? The conversion story where she grew up straight in a totally straight-laced environment, or the one where she started getting the tinglies downstairs after being at a lesbian bar? Because her conversion stories are a little bit different.
no matter how costly it was. I say that, and listen to this man's response.
Because she has the humility to bow to the authority of Scripture in all of life. Ooh. Are they dating?
Are they dating?
This is like makeout language. Besides, when she was at G3...
It was the makeout language was the part about, she must always be listened to. It's like when someone's trying to defend their girlfriend's honor. I shall always defend you.
I spoke, so there's that. Okay. I have no earthly idea who Diane Gaskins is, to be honest. A quick search turned... Ad hominem here. A quick search...
Notice ad hominem here. So if you identify Bible-thumping wingnut and the New Christian Intellectual...
No, if you say you have no idea who she is, I got no idea who she is. That's an ad hominem.
Ad hominem here. A quick search turned up associations with the usual suspects, all in the same camp, Bible-thumping wingnut, TNCI. Not sure what that is.
Not sure what that is. Hey, Cody, you need to tell your boss.
But
He just has a fantastic sense of humor, doesn't he?
He say if? He read the word if. It didn't register, but he read the word if.
with piles of categories.
In the comment, in the thread, you said they intended to slander a sister.
Got it behind a paywall. I'm saying if this is what comes out, then this is what I'm going to do. How?
He also said, I will stand with Rosaria Butterfield. He doesn't say, if I will then stand with Rosaria Butterfield. He simply says he will stand with Rosaria Butterfield, and her wisdom always needs to be listened to.
Her. We all know it. I was at G3, remember? We all know your animus.
Who has animus here? I don't know who Diane Gaskins is, but I see who she's associated with.
Can he quote me without that voice? I don't think so.
No, I cannot.
Think he can.
I think you actually
I could do like a different voice, but I don't think it really sounds like James White.
don't want to actually speculate on the source of where those voices come from. No, I never said that.
Okay.
Going.
So
If I wanted to do Rich, I would have to pinch my nose and do a different impression of Rich.
Anybody? I was saying, if this, then that. Again, fundamentalist struggle with conditional sentences.
No, he wasn't. Hey, readers, go back and read the thread again, or read the OP. Read the OP again. He's not being honest.
In New Testament Greek, that just where they would rather the King James was translated without the subjunctive.
is this how a wise man judgeth all things? No, it's like Rosaria is good because we're told that Rosaria is good. I'm told that Rosaria is good, so we like her. Right. Genius, James. Genius. If the normal fundy associationalist tripe together with piles of category errors and always present animus that marks P&P and its writers in general is on the menu for this expose, I, for one, will be using my platform to call it out and set the record straight. By the way, I just want to throw this out there. I think it's an odd day and time when true Reformed Baptists, I'm talking about Arbica type, 1689 confessional Baptists, they despise James White these days. I want you to know that he's lost his argument. They like me more than they like James White. And that's saying something.
It's true. They make. You should have been in Arbica last year.
Almost done. Thankfully, mercifully, it's almost done. But wow, what kind of a world is it like to live with this kind of stuff running through your head?
He's so clueless. He's so clueless. He's so clueless.
Just astonishing.
This is why I resisted you.
This is why when you make, guys, do me a favor, ARBCA folks, when you, or excuse me, Reformed Baptist types, when you make fun of James's tattoo sleeve and his Smirnoff Ice and his hipster midlife crisis, for the love of all that's good and pure, make fun of him to his face, please. So he knows. It's like if you have a friend with the zipper down, you don't just laugh. You laugh and say, "You afraid of heights?" You get them to pull their zipper up. If you just laugh behind their back, their zipper stays down. James White's walking through the world not knowing that everybody is going, "You left PRBC for Apologia Church? The way you're dressing. What? Did you get like a Chinese tramp stamp on your back too? Like, are you going to come out next with toupee, James?" He has no idea. He has no idea what people are thinking.
He had potential, and he has invested it in just self-destructive behavior, and it's destructive to people around him. And I will not apologize for standing up and saying, if there are brothers and sisters in Christ who are going to be maligned by this man, we have every...
I will always stand by them, because that's what he said about Rosaria Butterfield. She must always be listened to. Her godly wisdom must always be listened to. By the way, he said he's read her books. All right.
So, less than 2 minutes, so...
The man has changed. He is not who he used to be. He cares about being cool and hip and relevant, and he'll talk about...
I wear Gucci sweaters, and
Listen to what I say next.
Don't
I
get me
hope he
started.
plays it. I hope he plays it. Listen to what I said next. Listen to what I said next.
yeah, I've never heard the idea.
Listen to what I say
irrelevant,
next.
any of that could possibly...
Listen to what I say
be,
next.
Wear bow ties. Have you seen my suits? I'm such a nerd. But he knows that being a nerd is in. He understands that that's his way of peacocking. It's sad.
True.
It's a midlife crisis.
True.
And attacking Diane in this way, what has she done? He has no idea the quotations, the work, the research that Diane has put into this.
Rolling his eyes.
I'm going to make sure everybody pays me to get an idea.
None. But he's going to use his platform to call it out. And
It's
set the record straight.
free!
Attaboy, biggin.
Nothing like understanding the word if. Yeah, got to have that word. Yeah, it's an important word.
Do it. James White, do it.
He's really got to hide behind the word if, because he's about ready to get demolished. But it doesn't matter, because he said he's read her book. Really?
Some junk, I don't know. While riding a bike, having imaginary arguments in his head with Steven Anderson. That's what maybe that's how he should spend his time. If he doesn't want to actually do research into subjects before he opines. The reason why we're talking
Notice
about
the look
Rosaria
on his
Butterfield is
face.
because she's
It's going to be
leading the way
wiped off here in a
into,
second.
Our camp. Even though she is a Tim Keller Gospel Coalition-ite. And KSP is her best friend. And she is teaching that hospitality is basically the same thing as LGBT affirmation. And when J.D. Greer talks about pronoun hospitality taken from Preston Sprinkle, he got that concept from Rosaria Butterfield. James White knows none of this.
I know none of this. Except that when I responded to J.D. Greer and criticized that perspective, Rosaria wrote to me and thanked me for taking that stand.
Is it possible that someone who's subversive speaks out of both sides of their mouth? Oh.
It's irrelevant.
How could Judas betray Jesus? He's a disciple. How could the founder of the Nicolaitans, Nicholas, be the founder of the Nicolaitans? Nicholas was a deacon. It's not possible. Discernment. This is just discernment.
I honestly believe he makes these things up in his mind, and it becomes fact, irrefutable, concrete. I can't prove it, but that's my experience with him.
Oh, no, yeah, I would say that he is so invested in his own infallibility that it becomes...
Not infallible.
Yeah, that's what's frightening.
If you're going to have a podcast, talk about that which you know.
By the way, I've said I've been wrong several times. Like with Josh Duggar in my argument with Janet Medford. She was right, I was wrong. Can you think of a time that James White has ever said that he's wrong? Ever.
I've just proven you wrong over and over and over again. Let me give you one example, then we're going to wrap this up. On Facebook, one of Jordan Hall's, after he told Kofi to go home,
And by that, I meant England.
comments was this. Let me try to be more humble and less braggadocious, as apparently it is my arrogance that has everyone in this thread upset. I have debated 3,535,345,345 moderated debates on 7 continents, 12 planets, 2 galaxies, and inside 1 black hole. I've written 45 books on the topic of Muslim apologetics and have debated in 98 mosques, 47 synagogues, and at least 1 madrasa in Beirut. I did all the above while riding between such events on my bicycle and listening to debate prep on 1.5 speed. There, that's less arrogant than mentioning Pulpit and Pen's many readers. I hope that suffices and pacifies your complaint. So what that tells me is
That I listened to the dividing
JD
line.
is well aware of the fact that when it comes to actual apologetics,
I'm glad that he's going there because I thought he was going to say bike riding.
does anyone remember the factual reality that despite the division between us, I accurately and fairly analyzed the debates that he's done?
No. Point of order. And James, I might send you an email about this one. When you have said that I've won those debates, like with Jeff Durbin, that was before we had any public animus.
Everyone's concern should be, if this man is willing to behave like this, what does it say about the quality of the argumentation in the book? Because it's an important subject. And I do not doubt for a second that JD will have tons of facts. Here's the problem, though. If you try to fit facts into a warped worldview, a worldview that is warped by your own absolute obsession to be considered the infallible source of all.
He keeps saying that. It's not true.
Stand-
I do want to be right, though. And when somebody's calling somebody else, oh, you think you're infallible or whatever, it's usually because they're wrong. And so they're, well, you think you're perfect. It's because they're wrong. That's how they respond.
So he can have all the good research in the world, but good research with an undisciplined, rebellious, self-centered mind will
That's not very loving.
not help any of us. It will not help any of us. That's the problem. That's the problem. Now, one last thing. Why?
Mercy sakes.
Why? Over and over.
I
And
wish
had
I
some
had a
conversation on
Smirnoff
the weekend.
Ice at this point in the
Why even
program.
bother? Just ignore the man.
You can't.
You cannot ignore bullies. You cannot ignore people who are going to use their platform to destroy others in the body. That's cowardice.
Right. Like Clayton Jennings, Greg Locke, Karen Swallow Pryor, Jurgen Kanner, Michael Brown. Yeah, we really go after some really solid people, don't we? Pulpit and Pen is here for the church, not against it.
How infantile his behavior is. He doesn't realize it. I'm not doing that hoping.
By the way, Google James White immature. I believe Paul Flynn did, and not that I shouldn't recommend him. I'll just Google the immature. All right.
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's anybody close to him. That I think it's done. We tried for years. Elders got involved and churches got involved. We tried for
The time that our elders got involved, my elders had an agreement with him that we would not attack each other. James White broke that within 24 hours. He broke an agreement that he signed with my elders. If I need to, I'll get my elders in on that. That was not to rein me in. That was so that we might make peace. And James White broke that agreement within 24 hours. I might have misspoken. It might have been 36 hours. It was certainly before 2 days, 2 full days.
Just this one particular instance. I wish that's how everybody thought, but it's unfortunately not. So, in conclusion, nothing's changed. J.D. Hall exploded and spewed vile venom all over the internet again, but nothing's changed. If they ever get around to taking the Diane Gaskins stuff out from behind a paywall and put it out where it can be evaluated.
Y'all see that right now, right?
And done so fairly, then if it does engage in fundamentalist, associationalist, category error-ridden argumentation, I will call it out.
And he needs to apologize for saying that we intended to slander her if it turns out that our facts are facts. And maybe he didn't read her book, and then he should repent for saying that he did. By the way, he didn't read that book.
So we will use this platform because there is a more important issue here.
Vanity.
We need to provide a meaningfully balanced, gracious, biblical, non-compromising response to our society. And the J.D. Halls of the world are not equipped to give that to us.
Michael Brown is, though.
Nuclear weapons and C4. But when it comes to actually providing deeply thought out responses that are not dependent upon just punching somebody in the nose as your first rebuttal, that's not coming from pulpit and pen. Never
It probably will not come from pulpit and pen. That's true.
says don't do that because they get clicks.
We blow stuff up.
And they get paid for it. But there's the documentation is there.
Some stuff needs blown up.
I will allow anyone. Just
If you want to parse a verb, go to the dividing line.
you'll see what the difference is. All right, with that, we went long. I'm sorry if you tuned in looking for something else. We're going to fire up Radio Free Geneva at 2:30. A different stream. This stream is ending. We're going to do Radio Free Geneva, response to Mike Winger, 2:30, our time, which is 4:30 Eastern time. I don't know what time it is.
Great. Okay, thanks. Only, one bike reference? Is that it? So we'll get into this. From Diane Gaskins. This is the book. We're going to talk about the book that James White says he's read. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this up. Now, it's not on the website yet, although it could be, to be fair. She was doing some last-minute edits, so it'll probably be up soon. But I'm looking at a preview from an editor's from the back end of the website. I'm just going to show you that on this screen, and I'm going to be on my other monitor scrolling and just giving you some information. Okay, I'm not going to give you Diane's words per se. I'm going to give you information from Diane's article, and then you can click on it, and it'll be public. Don't freak out about the paywall, which is half as much as Apologia's, twice as good content. Rosaria, but actually, they have some really good content. Production-wise, it's nice. Rosaria Butterfield promotes Sam Alberry's theology, a Catholic priest who says God is gay, and an occultic scholar. So let's just go through this information that James White says he knows all about it. Okay? Now, her most recent book is The Gospel Comes with a House Key. Hold on a second. I'm getting a text. Oh, it is published. It is published at Pulpit and Pen. That's nice. You can go see it. I'm going to continue to do this, though. Let me see if that's true, though. Hold on a second. Not that I don't trust you, person who texted me. Sorry. Internet's taking time because of the bandwidth I'm hogging, I guess. Rosaria Butterfield, yep, it's up. Promotes Sam Allberry's theology. Catholic priest who says God is gay, and an occultic scholar. So I'm going to slap this in here. It's freezing on me. Well, forget it then. Okay, so the latest book, The Gospel Comes with a House Key. Diane heavily relies on quotes in the article to let Rosaria speak for herself. All right. A commonly held misconception is that Rosaria Butterfield has a more careful theology of same-sex attraction than her friend Sam Allberry. Rosaria promotes the very concept of lifelong same-sex attraction celibacy that Sam Allberry seeks to model. This Together for the Gospel interview posted at Living Out is an excellent primer on how similar their teachings actually are. And then it's a video so that you can watch it for yourself. It's just under 20 minutes. So Rosaria's key slogans that summarize her message and those of the same-sex attraction movement are present there, and they're problematic in the interview. Slogans like, well, we're born this way. Because of the fall, we're all born this way. Rosaria teaches that the fall means that we're each born with a particular sinful inclination, and homosexuality is just one such inclination. She says, quote, homosexuality is an ethical outworking of original sin. Do you know what that means? We're born that way. All right. Well, it doesn't seem that controversial. I could even agree with that. Let's see where it goes, though, shall we? We're all messy. Don't you love it when people use the word messy instead of sinful? We're all messy. And she teaches that all sins are equal to one another. Homosexuality isn't worse than any other sin. Is it? Is it not? So I'm pretty sure in Romans 1, he alludes to homosexuality as the height of human depravity. People ought to know that it's wrong whether or not they have the law of Moses. You know that doesn't go there. It's an abomination unto the Lord. So she engages in the same type of sin leveling that the LGBTQ lobby does. She says, quote, we should not, this is Rosaria, quote, we should not think of our gay and lesbian neighbors as struggling with something that's different. It's just a part of the human condition. So she's like, we all have a human condition. Homosexuality isn't any worse than anything else. She says, quote, don't assume that for your gay and lesbian neighbors, the worst sin is their life of homosexuality. Could be worse. You know, unbelief, for example, is a higher sin. Homosexuality, quote, is a fruit of something else. It's symptomatic. If all you do is repent of a sin on its surface, that makes it worse. And by the way, at 5 minutes and 40 seconds in that video posted at Pulpit and Pen, she uses large gestures to mock believers who would be so ignorant as to harp upon the surface sin of vile affections. Lesbianism, being gay, that's just a surface. It's a surface issue. She says, quote, get this one. What if your neighbors are lesbians who've been in a committed marriage for 50 years and haven't had sex in 20 years? You'll look like an idiot when you rebuke them for your homosexuality. Huh. So you can't rebuke someone for homosexuality when they're in a gay marriage, living as a straight couple. It's only a sin if they're like doing sexual acts. That's what Rosaria teaches. You'll look like an idiot if you rebuke them for homosexuality and they haven't had sex in 20 years, but they've been in a committed marriage for 50 years. By the way, let me put this out. If you're really committed to sin, it doesn't make you better than if you're only somewhat committed to sin. All right? This is the fundamental misunderstanding in the SSA gay Christian unit thing. It's like the way they look at homosexuality as though it is no big deal or no grievous thing. What if it's a committed marriage? Does it matter if it's a committed marriage? Well, what if I told you I was a committed pedophile? I'm really committed to it. Every Thursday night like clockwork. No, it doesn't. But she's She's clearly saying it doesn't matter unless they've been having sex. Remember how, was it Rebecca McLaughlin or one of the other lesbians at the Gospel Coalition, who said at the Crew event that if you are married and gay and get saved, you should not get a divorce. Because the Bible says not to put out an unbelieving spouse. I kid you not. No, we posted the video at Pulpit and Pen. That's what Rosaria is basically saying here. I mean, they're not having sex. Is it really wrong? Is gay marriage really bad if they're not having sex? By the way, they're having sex. What planet are you on? Lifelong celibacy, she says, is what gay Christians need to do. Not marriage, not heterosexual behavior. Lifelong celibacy because, quote, she says, reparative therapy is the prosperity gospel. Rosaria Butterfield states, quote, I do not believe sexual orientation changes are a gospel imperative. Can I change a word in that? I'm changing it, but just tell me what you think of it. I do not believe sexual orientation changes, no. I do not believe that repentance is a gospel imperative. It makes it sound funny, doesn't it? I do not believe sexual orientation changes. Hold on a second. Isn't your sexual orientation, if it's homosexuality, an aspect of a fallen nature? And you don't believe that repentance and God sanctifying you, like changing you, is a gospel matter? She says, I'm on record for saying that reparative therapy is the prosperity gospel. Reparative therapy is the social gospel. Or prosperity gospel, my bad. Reparative therapy is heresy. On this earth, God will give one person 10 crosses to bear and another person 1. What she's teaching is a fundamental denial of God the Holy Spirit. What she's saying is, if we say that God will change you, and those who Christ frees, he frees indeed. And when you come to the cross, God will change your heart. She says that is prosperity gospel. No, that's a redefinition of terms. The prosperity gospel is that God will give you a Cadillac, not that God will give you a new heart. That is the gospel. You think I get mad at James White? You just wait until somebody takes a big steamy dump on the gospel, and I'm going to get real mad. I don't want a gospel that cannot change my heart. Damn that gospel. Damn that gospel. Because it's a fake one. It belongs in hell. The real gospel changes hearts. I'd preach nothing else. And nothing else is worthy to be preached in the name of Jesus. To preach that God will change your heart is something as perverse as the prosperity gospel. Hope you see why I'm upset. These people are worried about fake news at Pulpit and Pen. I'm a lot more worried about fake gospel coming out of them. She continues, she says, and I think the prosperity gospel is to say, no, give your life to Jesus and all will be well. What the gospel promises is that if God gives you a heavy cross to bear, the Lord himself will uphold the heavier part. The cross that we carry for Christ is not sin. Sin is what we throw down. Sin is what we throw down to follow Christ. The cross is the consequence of picking up Jesus and suffering with him. He already suffered for our sin. We throw down our sin. We pick up our cross. What the heck is wrong with you people? James White read this? James, did you read this? These people get upset when I mock them. And they care nothing for when God is mocked. Yeah, God will help you carry your cross of homosexuality. God will break the curse of homosexuality. If you don't believe that, you're in a different religion from me. God will turn thieves into honest men and murderers into gentlemen. Perverse. She says Christians have deeply oppressed this victim group. The LGBT community must disciple us on this. She says the gay and lesbian community is a real community, and you know what? The Christian church has a lot to learn about standing with the disempowered and accompanying the suffering and being good company for the suffering. Rosaria came to faith during the AIDS epidemic, Diane explains, and has strong memories of standing with the disempowered. She says, I often say to parents who have lost covenantal children to the gay community, you will have to work very hard to love your son and daughter better than the gay community. So she has conceded that the gay community loves their son and daughter. Jesus said, or John says, that God is love. God gets to define love. Love is not sodomizing your son. No gay person in the history of the world has loved another gay person while they're sodomizing them. It's an act of hatred and anger. But you're going to find out in a minute, Rosaria says not to mention anal sex, ever. Not to mention anal sex. Because it's vitriolic. You don't have to work hard to outlove the gay community. I promise you that. Because it's hatred. Sticking something up somebody's butt is hatred. Sorry for the bluntness. I don't know what's wrong with people. So what are the implications of this same-sex attraction doctrine? What exactly are, to use the words Rosaria used in the above interview, the ground rules of the new game? Sorry. One of the hallmarks of Rosaria's interviews is her interviewer is always most curious for her advice to parents and pastors. And in this 6-minute interview, Rosaria provides her usual advice. She reminds churches that, quote, heterosexuality is not the answer to homosexuality. And there are people who struggle with all manner of sin maybe their entire lives. There's obviously some truth to that. We struggle with sin our entire lives. But it's like saying law behaving is not the answer to criminality. Well, having a heart changed by the gospel, I suppose, is the answer on one level to criminality. But it will certainly lead to law keeping. The same principle applies here. It's the same principle. I forgot my place. Oh, she says, Rosaria tells parents that if a child comes to them and says they are gay and have adopted that lifestyle, they should respond, quote, in original sin, we're all born that way. whatever that way means. So shove that off on original sin. And her advice to elders and pastors is that they must understand, this is her advice to to pastors. Understand that homosexuality is a sin, but so is homophobia. Right? Because there's tons of that in the church, right? Oh, you're gay. I don't want to touch you. Gross. Like, that's the bane of our existence. That's really what we struggle with. Now, here, Rosaria, housekeep, page 55. And everything I'm telling you, if you go to the website, you'll see this, the reference, a citation of the book. Rosaria believes, quote, the strength of our words must never exceed the strength of our relationships. So this is the relationship evangelism, except you might call it relationship sanctification. I don't know, but it's like our words should never exceed the power of our relationships. And so she's going to go to this. You can't preach against homosexuality if you're not first friends with the man. Let me be honest. There aren't a lot of things I have in common with the homosexual on any level. So friendship's going to be a challenge. I mean, I'm told not to be friends with the world, or else I'll be at enmity with God. So there's not a lot of... I should make friends with homosexuals before I can tell them homosexuality is a sin. Really? She says we need to share the gospel and we need to stop adding to the gospel. By the way, when she says adding, she means repentance, as though we're adding that to the gospel. It's a response to the gospel. And what I mean by this is that we need to share the gospel of hope in Jesus, not rant about anal sex. That can be very distracting. I wonder what her thoughts are, just out of curiosity, of showing dead baby photos outside of abortuaries. Well, if this doesn't get me kicked off Facebook, nothing will. Do you realize that when young men are engaged in sodomy, beginning at the age of 16, that oftentimes before they can legally purchase alcohol, they have to wear Depends or adult diapers because their butt leaks? Because they are torn up so bad, they literally leak out their rear end. Can we not talk about that? That if you're bleeding while you're having intercourse, you're doing it wrong. We can't mention the ugliness of sodomy. The fact that every ER doc you've ever met will tell you story after story after story of having to stitch up young men. No, because that is vitriolic. It's vitriolic, quote, in worship of God about what is right and what is wrong. House key 55. Excuse me, that's not house key 55. The source link is linked there. By the way, Diane says, elsewhere I have discussed the same-sex attraction movement's push to remove the revolting image of male sodomy from their minds. And that's what, sorry, I'm catching up on my messengers, my comm boxes, doing this live. Okay. Forgive the delay. As Diane points out, what they try to do is remove the image of the male act of gay sex. And I was talking to Diane about this on the phone. It didn't make it in the post, the last version I saw. I'm now reading the final version for the first time. They use lesbians to push their agenda. Rosaria, Rebecca, Jackie. I can't remember all the lesbians they have at the Gospel Coalition. Because of the act and the nature of female on female sodomy, for lack of a better word, which just means unnatural affection. It's not as violent as, it's not as ugly. It's not as traumatizing to the body as male sodomy. So they use lesbians to push their agenda so as to not make us think about the act of it. I want a t-shirt that simply says gay is gross. Or a bumper sticker. Not a bumper sticker. I don't want people keying my pickup. I just got a new one. It doesn't even have a single dent from chasing coyotes. Not a single bullet hole. So maybe just a t-shirt. Key me, sucker. It just says gay is gross. Why can't I say it? It's true. It's disgusting. Why can't we say it? Rosaria frequently explains that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed by God not for sodomy, but for their greater sins of, quote, neglect of the poor and the needy. James, did you read that, James? James White, did you read that Sodom was not destroyed over sodomy? But because of their neglect of the poor and the needy? James White, did you read that? Diane goes into a few other things, like the Bible doesn't condone gay jokes, which are never funny. Not true. Sometimes they are funny. But whether the coarse jesting should be prohibited. And I'm not joking about that. Coarse jesting is not okay. But you can't say that it's not funny. It's hilarious, but it's still not acceptable. She continues, the Bible does not condone talking about people instead of listening to them. Shut up. What tripe is that? The Bible doesn't condone talking about people instead of to them. Yes, it does. It happens all the time. All over the place. Our lack of genuine hospitality to our neighbors, all of them, including neighbors in the LGBT community, is a violent form of neglect for their souls. It's a violent form of neglect. Not bringing them into your house is a violent form of neglect. How about this? If they claim to be a Christian and they're a homosexual, I'm not allowed to have dinner with them. Right? 1 Corinthians 5, with such a one, do not even eat. So she teaches a hospitality evangelism. So she gives an example where a lesbian neighbor comes crying because her partner finds her ugly. Well, she probably is, because most lesbians are ugly. Rosaria's response is, Jesus would never treat you like this. Jesus treats his daughters perfectly. She adds, do I have the grace to say this little thing, or do I always have to say something else about the sin of the subject? If so, I've become a brute and a bore. So you're gonna comfort her instead of using it as a witnessing opportunity. You're not going to bring up the sin of homosexuality. You're going to be like, I think you're pretty. Jesus would never treat one of his children this way. Well, she's not one of Jesus' children. Plus, Jesus would also never sodomize one of his children. So that's a point that you could make. If you've read Sam Alberry's The Living Out Audit, all of his mandated sensitivity will have an eerily familiar ring. Here's why. When Diane read the audit, she immediately recognized it as a codification of all she had been already read about Rosaria Butterfield. Rosaria has not yet counted as loss, Philippians 3:8, her lesbian past. She's normalizing and glorifying what the church has for millennia considered to be an abomination and vile affections. Nowhere is this more vivid than when reading her most recent book. One rarely encounters a page that does not have a glowing endorsement of what she calls the LGBTQ community. The community. A community, by the way, is based upon shared values. You don't build a community based upon shared deviances. You don't talk about the pedophile community or the adultery community, do you? And if you talked about the swingers community, you'd say, what the is wrong with you? Why are you using that term? And yet she does frequently. And she boasts about the virtue of the LGBTQ community that she belonged to. Rosaria wrote, quote, "The idea that our houses are hospitals and incubators was something I learned in my lesbian community in New York." Where does she get her hospitality stuff? It's not from the Bible. I mean, the Bible talks about elders being hospitable, the importance of hospitality in the Old Testament, and also in the New. But where's she getting her understanding of hospitality? The idea is something I learned, quote, "I learned in my lesbian community in the New York in the 90s. We knew that so-called Christian neighbors despised and distrusted us. If you despise and distrust homosexuals, you know, because they're more likely to rape your kids, fact. Then you want to pick a fight over that? Let's do that, statistics-wise. Then you're a so-called Christian. And so they would gather each other. So that's why Rosaria says the gospel comes with a house key. Here, come live with me. Let me make a point that I wanted to make in the article, and someone wouldn't let me. Rosaria's book, The Gospel Comes with a House Key, I think is perfect. Perfect title. As Rosaria continually in the book looks back with positive glowing affirmations on the LGBTQ community, and that's how she came up with the hospitality. Her understanding of hospitality, the theme of the book. It's like she's looking back as Lot's wife did at Sodom, going, I have to leave it, but I'm surprised that Rosaria is not a pillar of salt. Dang it, why didn't we title the article that? Duh. Rosaria ought to be a pillar of salt. That would have been a good headline. But let me ask you, do you think it's a good thing that the Sodomites did not have a key to Lot's house? I think you get my point. Radical hospitality, she says, seeks to make strangers and make them the family of God. She also speaks of Christian brothers and sisters who struggle with unchosen homosexual desires and longings, sensibilities and affections, temptations and capacities. Some people who have more to lose than others. Some people who live with unanswered questions and unfulfilled life dreams, and asks, what is your responsibility towards those brothers and sisters? The gospel must come with the house key. And so the LGBTQ community, in her mind, it was designed, well, not in her mind, but in reality, it was designed to replace the family, because homosexuals can't reproduce. Not without doing something they're not inclined to do. We have kids on accident. They don't. I'll put it that way. And I'm not speaking for myself. They don't have marital relationships, and gay-on-gay marriage is not a substitute for real marriage. So they have to have this community sense, quote unquote. They have to travel in a gaggle because they need to replace the whole of the family unit that God designed to be in people's lives. I'm going through it. There's a lot of material. I'm just trying to decide which to share with you. And she speaks of opening up her home 7 nights a week and all day Sunday, in terms of needing to check her privilege. So privacy in your home is a privilege. Don't come to my house and expect to stick around without an invitation. Because I have a wife and kids, and sometimes they're naked. I don't mean in a weird way. I just mean, you got 5 kids, ages 3 to 15. You have no idea, 16, who's got their pants on, right? So just give me a ring first. she's describing what is called the flop house. You know what a flop house is? Google it. I'm sorry, the Bible does not tell us we have to turn our home into a flop house for gay people. So where is she getting these ideas? Where is she getting them? Well, in terms of her testimony that is mixed, at a Ligonier lecture, she says, I had what was completely a heterosexual adolescence. And in college, I had my first boyfriend, healthy experience, and yet blah, 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 turned to being gay. And yet, in the middle of her last book, she wrote about her abusive and sexually traumatic childhood, a subject far removed from her usual themes. She describes 2 alcoholic parents who kept Playgirl and Playboy in the bathroom, a domineering mother, ate apples and trees, a heroin addict who masturbated on the... That should not have a hyphen, editors. Masturbated on the family room couch, a beloved gay cousin who posed for Playgirl and opened a gay bar, and it was this bar where Rosaria was dragged as a young girl, where she recalls seeing drag queens, sodomites in cages, and a lesbian embrace that made her experience a tingling in her whole body that, quote, took her breath away. And she recounts, quote, these images shocked and seduced me. I longed to recapture them and shuddered at the possibility. She's giving 2 different stories. That is nothing like what she said at Ligonier. Why isn't she advertising in Ligonier type circles that her exposure to homosexuality was at a gay bar with lesbians in cages and surrounded by filth? I believe it is because she and other activists like her have a vested interest in believing that you are, by necessity, born that way with nature and no nurture. I believe that people can have a natural predisposition to all sorts of sins, including homosexuality. I don't disagree with Miss Butterfield on part of that point. But there's a lot of nurture that usually goes into it as well. A lot. I mean, just ask the typical gay man what his relationship with his dad was like. All right? Okay. So she's giving two different stories in front of 2 different groups of people. Now, I'm going to go on. Reading Rosaria Butterfield's The Gospel Comes with a House Key, she opens the first chapter of the book by stating that in the morning she prays in concentric circles. Pagan prayer practice. James, did you notice the pagan prayer practice? Chapter 2 is heavily loaded with unorthodox terminology, the Jesus paradox, so forth. The title of the chapter is The Jesus Paradox, and when I did a Google search, I found that to be a technical term for contemplative prayer and Zen meditation. For details, see this contemplative prayer site run by a Franciscan priest, Richard Rohr. I know a few things about Rohr that didn't make their way into the article, it looks like. Radical dude. Google him. By the way, The Gospel Coalition by Fred Sanders in 2016. I don't think this is in the article. I think this is from my head. In 2016, Fred Sanders did an article about Richard Rohr and about how wildly unorthodox he was. And that's who she's quoting. He's a Zen Buddha, like Zen meditative fellow, and then he like adopted then contemplative prayer as a Roman Catholic priest. He's not a Jesuit. He's a Franciscan. Rosaria writes strange lines such as, only in the Jesus paradox do these incongruous ideas come together, and Jesus can set in motion a contagion of grace, and the Jesus paradox manifests contagious grace. Hospitality is an image bearer driven because Christ's blood pumps me whole. These are all like quotations from Richard Rohr. She's using his language. In chapter 3, Rosaria praises a fellow by the name of Henry Nouwen. She brings him up, Henry Nouwen, who she calls the late and gentle Catholic priest. And I imagine it was like gentle. The gentle Catholic priest. He ran a center, he was gay, for real. He ran a center for disabled persons and, quote, regarded hospitality as a spiritual movement, one that is possible only when loneliness finds its spiritual refreshment in solitude, when hostility resolves itself in hospitality, and when illusions are manifested in prayer. By the way, if you're a lonely priest, quit the priesthood, get married, make babies. You'll never be lonely ever again. I promise you. You get 5 kids, you won't ever have a problem with loneliness. Twice in that book, Rosaria recommended to her readers the wisdom of Henry Nouwen. Twice she recommended Henry Nouwen. This isn't like he endorsed her book or he endorsed the back of her book and she chose to publish it with that endorsement. She's saying, I recommend Henry Nouwen to you. I commend him to you. That's 1 degree of separation. 1. If that. I don't even know if there's enough room for the Holy Spirit between those two. Twice she endorses him. When one reads the back of Rosaria Butterfield's book, they'll encounter a list of books she recommends to her readers. These books include Sam Allberry, who I believe was exposed on James White's website by Tom Buck. Sam Allberry. John Calvin, and poor John Calvin. Contemplative gurus, occult feminists, queer theologians. Henry Nouwen is again introduced in that book list. By the way, Nouwen can also be found in Sam Allberry's Living Out curriculum. By the way, a curriculum that incorporates Rosaria Butterfield's teaching at her permission. The Nouwen quotation displayed here is from a letter he wrote, a young gay man. Thank you so much for the expression of your desire and hope. You know already that the young, attractive, affectionate, caring, intelligent, spiritual, and socially conscious gay man has only one name. God. I'm not going to say it twice. Blasphemy. Heresy. Where's she getting all of this? Who's Henry Nouwen? Nouwen was obsessed with loneliness because he was a priest and he was homosexual. Was he a priest? I might be confusing him with, let me take that back. Read the article for yourself. He was an unfulfilled homosexual longing and craving for affection and friendship. He was thought to have perhaps died of loneliness. And speaking of his homosexuality, he said, quote, "These are not really my demons, these are my angels." Looking back at Sodom. These are my angels. In Love Henry, page 105, he engaged in male relationships that were intensely emotionally charged, but submitted to a cross of withholding that which could be beautiful. In other words, they weren't sexing each other, but they had intense. By the way, yeah, they were, but they admitted to male relationships that were intensely emotionally charged. What about Nouwen on spirituality, hospitality, and social justice? His book on spirituality, which is the one that Rosaria recommended and endorsed, is an excellent roadmap, Diane writes, to the pit of hell. It is full of Zen Buddhism and advice like, delve into yourself for a deep answer, and if we stop telling ourselves the world is such and such, and so it will cease to be so, and the mystery of spirituality is that God in us speaks to God. The book provides many explicit declarations for utilizing mantras as a way to enter into, quote, union with God and experience the illumination of enlightenment. However, he also wrote on hospitality. His definition of hospitality is a state of acceptance, which is the, quote, polar opposite of hostility. 3 Movements, 106. That's the subtitle of the book, by the way. 3 Movements. You can find it on Amazon. Google it. He describes, quote, our vocation is to turn the enemy into a guest. Tell me who this sounds like. Our vocation is to turn an enemy into a guest and to create a free and fearless space where brotherhood and sisterhood can be fully experienced. Who does that word for word sound like? The woman who recommended his book. Word for word. Yeah, he is a Catholic. Oh, he's a Catholic priest and a Zen specialist. Who knows? It's Catholicism. Marx, Freud, and the Bible. Henry Nouwen proudly kept a Bible next to Freud and Marx on his bookshelf. That's page 1100 of his book. Like Rosaria Butterfield, he was involved as an advocate for AIDS victims. He was a popular speaker for youth social justice conferences. Two of his favorite authors were Jim Wallace and Richard Foster. He was a frequent contributor to Sojourners, along with Russell Moore, by the way. How about Mary Douglas? Let me go on to this. Another dark book Rosaria Butterfield recommended is Purity and Danger. Now, this isn't like, she mentions it. She's endorsing it. She's like, yeah, great book. Read this book. This is an awesome book. Like, with no disagreements towards the book. But like, this is a great book. Read this. Mary Douglas. The book is Purity and Danger, an analysis of concepts of pollution and taboo. She is a feminist anthropologist, Mary Douglas is. In the beginning of the book, Douglas relays a wonderful ceremony where a pagan tribe extracts a woman's pus, I have to say that carefully, into the bowl and drinks, everyone in the circle drinks down that pus, and then passes the bowl around for each other to drink. Douglas is famous for her unique analysis of Levitical taboos. I could maybe relay more of Mary Douglas's work, except my conscience forbade me to read past the first chapter. She said, quote, "Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God." Mary Douglas wrote another book, Witchcraft Confessions and Accusations. She is an esteemed writer in the occult community. Mary Douglas is one of only two authors that Rosaria Butterfield recommends twice. James White, did you read that? Oh, I thoroughly read all of Rosaria's books, except for the one that they're talking about, and that one, I don't believe that he did. Rosaria writes, quote, "When I was in graduate school, we all devoured Mary Douglas. Her book, Purity and Danger, an analysis of concepts of pollution and taboo, was formative in my thinking about insiders and outsiders." She got it from a freaking occultic witch. That was formative in her understanding of insiders and outsiders. And she's taking this from a witch! An actual witch! And put it in her hospitality book. James White, did you get that? Douglas's essay, Deciphering a Meal, was instrumental in developing the radical hospitality that knit together the lesbian and gay community. It's what she said in House Key 33. She's a witch. Like an actual witch. Like a KSP level witch. I take that back. I don't know that Karen Swallow Pryor is a witch. I just suspect it. How can this be? So an author on the dark arts and a New Age mystic, someone who says that God is gay, will now disciple Christians on radical hospitality. And the whole thing behind Rosaria Butterfield is we need her because she's an ex-gay, and we need an ex-gay to help us. But she's coming up here telling us that lesbians and gays need to disciple us on hospitality? How about this? Leave all your sin right where you're at, and you come to Jesus. Or better yet, just come as you are to Christ. But he's going to tell you to pick up the cross. And there's not enough room to hold his cross and your sin. You got to pick one down and put down the other. Anyways, those are the authors that Butterfield recommends. Nouwen, the Zen Buddhist guy, the occultic woman, the other homo up there. She's dangerous. Did I leave out the part where she's, don't preach against homosexuality. You have to reach out to people with your friendship. With what other sin are we like, now you need to be friends with that person before you address it? Did you just preach a sermon on theft? You need to befriend that thief first. No, I don't. No, I don't. How many people in Nineveh did Jonah have to befriend before he could preach repentance? When you put all this together, and this is just a summary, go through everything Diane writes and links. And not just the gay stuff, the Sam Albury stuff, who wrote the foreword, which is not, White can all day long characterize it as 5 degrees of separation. That's one degree. That James White exposed him, but she's fine with him. What does that tell you about her discernment? All right. The best way I can describe what Rosaria is teaching is dangerous. The second best way is to call it crap. But James White thinks she's great. Why? Because he judges by appearances. She belongs to a small conservative presbytery. Her husband is a pastor. She's a lecturer at Ligonier, and also a bunch of other leftist places, but also at Ligonier. She said some negative things about gay Christianity while saying here that we have to ask, I must have jumped over that part, that you have to call someone a gay partner a wife or a husband and use the preferred titles for them. James White, you read this book and you're okay with it? I got to call that person back because they're a church member if you heard that buzz. I don't like going through a program without sharing the gospel. Here's the gospel. Jesus Christ, who is the Son of God, became incarnate, implanting himself into the womb of a virgin as an embryo, having been conceived of the Holy Ghost, and he lived a life with a sinless nature because of the way he was conceived, unlike the rest of us, who are guilty of Adam's sin as well as our own. And he earned perfect righteousness that we could never earn. And then he died on the cross in the place of individual sinners. And he propitiated all of the wrath that God the Father has towards sin and sinners. And he rose again from the dead. He was in the grave, and they blocked it with a big rock, right? And put a couple of, bad dudes outside of it, some centurions. And the stone was rolled away. And Jesus walked out. If Jesus did that, he can free you from homosexuality. He can free you from your pornography addiction. He can free you from your alcohol abuse. He will free you. Not he can. He will. Your sin is not a cross. That cross paid for the sin. And Jesus conquered sin. You can chop off your penis and God will patch it back on in your resurrected body. He will completely fix what is broken. I mean, that's part of the good news. And anyone telling you, if you're gay, that you have to remain so, and you will always have that desire, do not listen to them. Sheep should recognize the voice of the shepherd. And they should hear someone cry out, "Be prepared to be celibate the rest of your life. Being gay is your cross. Pick it up." And they should say, "That is not the voice of the shepherd. That is an imitation. That person is a fraud." Jesus will take your sin and your sorrow. If I didn't believe that Jesus can make a gay person straight, I sure wouldn't believe that Jesus rose again from the dead. God bless you. You know, we fight because sometimes we're called to fight. Semper Reformanda.